4 mistakes that made me fat. Sean here from Fit Fusion Brotherhood. I've owned a gym for 10 years. I've coached thousands of clients, and I've seen a lot of people have their ups and downs when it comes to fat. But guess what? They're not the only ones. I've also had my own fair share of ups and downs. And typically, when I'm gaining extra fat, I make the same 4 mistakes over and over again. And I understand that my definition of fat when I'm applying it to myself is much different than a lot of you. So I'm not necessarily trying to diminish anyone else's experience that really struggles with it. But unlike a lot of other coaches, fitness-wise, who are able to stay consistent year-round, 24/7, my brother, the other half of the Bike Rook Bros, very consistent, never really gains extra fat, just is dialed in all the time. Myself, I'll go up and down. Some intentionally, some not so intentionally. So I do wanted to share some 4 things that have affected me negatively that get me thrown off track and really get more difficult to kind of bounce back from. So if you struggle with your body fat as well, this video might help. Hopefully you can learn some of these mistakes the easier way than I did. Okay, so the first mistake I made, and this is probably the biggest mistake I make, I also see this one with all sorts of clients all the time, and that's not having a specific nutrition plan. So I would still go in with the intention of eating healthy, and I would still eat a lot of protein and a lot of veggies, and the majority of my diet was healthy, but I didn't have a specific template or plan or some sort of purpose or mission to follow with my nutrition. I was kind of winging it with just, as long as I'm eating relatively healthy, I'll be fine. But if you listen to any of our other videos before, you realize there's a difference between eating healthy and eating right. So I'd be eating healthy, but because I didn't really have a specific nutrition plan, my portion sizes would be out of control. I didn't really have any specific timing or rules, and I was just gradually increasing my calories. I wouldn't even say without realizing it, because I was realizing it, but I didn't have that specific plan that kind of set me on track. So by having a specific plan, and this is what I do every single time I'm trying to cut weight, it just makes it much more easy to be consistent and build some positive momentum as well. So initially I was going to say not tracking calories, but to be honest, I've had success losing a ton of body fat without using tracking calories. So without using MyFitnessPal, I just find that it's a little bit easier. So for me, the most important thing when it comes to really staying on track and being dialed in is having a specific nutrition plan. Not just winging it, not being vague, not being ambiguous, but having a specific nutrition plan. It can be strict, it can be a little bit more flexible, but whatever it is, you gotta be clear with it and you gotta stick to it. Number 2, this one's very important for me, and I think this is the case for a lot of other guys as well. It's not having a specific goal or deadline or destination. So like a lot of guys out there, we're very mission and purpose driven. When we have something that we're working towards, we're much more likely to put a lot of energy and consistency into it. So when I look back at all the times that I was in really, really good shape, I was typically doing it for something. So whether it was like a vacation, a challenge, or even just like a hypothetical challenge that I set upon myself, but I had very clear standards for what I wanted to achieve and by when. That way I felt like I was working towards something. But if I just kind of set the goal of I want to lose fat or I want to be lean without really having any sort of end goal, I find it really difficult to stay on track. And I find this is the case for a lot of guys as well, especially after you've kind of transformed your body and you lose a lot of that excitement of chasing towards something. And then instead of shifting from goal to goal, you just kind of shift from goal to winging it. And then that's when we start to really lose a lot of that momentum. We slip up a little bit. Even if you don't completely fall off track, you lose a lot of those really good habits that were keeping you on track before. So when I look back at when I gained the most body fat, and this happens consistently, it's not only one time that I've gained a lot of body fat, but pretty much every time I've done this, it's because I haven't really had anything to work towards. I didn't give myself a specific goal, which allowed me to be more complacent. That inspiration, that fire, that motivation wasn't strong enough there as well, and that's kind of when I started to slip up. Number 3 is half-assing my workouts. So I'm lucky in the sense that I never really slip up with regards to consistency with my workouts. So even when I'm not dialed in, I'm still working out. And this is not like necessarily a direct thing when it comes to slacking on your workouts and gaining extra body fat, but it's more of the mindset. So when I'm slacking on my workouts, I'm slacking with my nutrition, I'm slacking with my sleep, I'm slacking with my walks. It's that whole quote, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I find that this type of habit also has effects with all other areas of my health and fitness as well. So when I'm not taking my fitness workouts that seriously, I'm typically not taking other areas of my fitness or health that seriously as well. Now, it is important to understand that it's super important to just be able to do this from time to time compared to doing nothing. So it's much better to half-ass your workouts compared to not doing any workouts at all. But I just kind of allowed myself to check in, check out, not really push myself too difficult, show in for the workout, don't really put a lot of effort into it, and at least I can feel better about myself, which there is a lot to say for the value of that, especially if you're struggling with consistency. But when I look at when times that I was really struggling to lose body fat and my body fat was kind of creeping up again, typically it would be one of the main reasons, one of the main correlative things that was happening at the same time was that my workouts were kind of slack. And then the last one is I didn't have metrics to be able to assess whether or not I was progressing. So when I'm losing fat, when I'm dialed in, I have my scale, so I'm tracking my weight all the time. I'm doing measurements, body fat, seeing how my clothes fit, checking out myself in the mirror. But when I feel like I'm not on track, I tend to avoid these things. And it's like the old adage where if you make a big purchase or maybe you're not doing so well with your career, what do? We typically want to avoid looking at our bank account, right? Which is actually the worst thing you can do because the problem just gets worse. What you should do instead is you want to be able to identify when there's a problem and stop that bleeding immediately. But for me, looking back at one of those times when I was really struggling with my body fat, I didn't have metrics to assess whether or not I was progressing. Even though I knew I wasn't dialed in, even though I knew things weren't great, I didn't want to see just how bad they were. So I would go months without weighing myself. And I remember on more than one occasions, kind of doing this for months without really checking the scale. And then I'd randomly check on the scale and it would be way higher than I thought. So I would think I was at like 190 and I would hop on the scale and be like 205, 206. And then all of a sudden I just dug myself a much deeper hole than I ever needed to. So even if you're not necessarily trying to be dialed in and perfect all the time, it still does help to have any sort of some sort of metric to keep you on track, because you might think our brain's really good at being able to rationalize and protect us from thinking things are terrible. So even though you might feel like you're kind of out of shape, we can rationalize it. We'll wear a little bit of a baggier shirt and be like, you know what, it's not that bad. It's not great. It's not that bad. And then by the time we actually realize it, we have an objective measure, you realize that it is that bad. And it was probably worse than you thought. So again, even if things aren't perfect, you should still have some sort of metric to be able to keep you on track. Just because you're ignoring the problem doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. If anything, it's going to make it much worse. So these are mistakes that I've made before, and to be honest, I'll probably make again. And if you're okay with understanding that these things happen from time to time, that's fine. But if you're frustrating with consistently going back and forth, on and off, just yo-yoing all the time, it's important to understand why these things might happen. Now, for me personally, the 4 biggest triggers were exactly the ones that I just stated. So number 1 is not having a very specific nutrition program. Number 2 would be half-assing my workouts, so not really pushing myself as much as I should be. Number 3, not having it like an objective metric to be able to assess whether or not I was progressing. And then number 4 would be not having a goal or deadline to work towards. So if you enjoy videos like this, do us a huge favor, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.